This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. AK-47 gunman guns down and kills a police officer. A senior military officer pistol whips a teenage girl. And a baby is set alight by her father. But firstly, a headline story, and it's something so bad you would never see any London gangsters do anything like this. And that is to shoot at a police officer. If you ever raised a gun in the UK against an officer of the law, you will be caught. No ifs, no buts. You will be arrested and you will be imprisoned, as it is wholly unacceptable to both the police and to the underworld, as it upsets the balance of how things are done. But two hoodlums here in Cambodia committed this most cardinal of sins when they did not just shoot at a police officer, they killed him. Police officer killed by AK-47 wielding drug dealer. A police officer was killed and another was seriously injured after a drug dealer opened fire on officers during a drug raid. The incident itself took place in Kompong Tom province. The police went to raid a property, but as they did so, a hail of bullets greeted them. Two men opened fire with an AK-47 assault rifle. A Lieutenant Colonel Survey was at the head of the raid, and bullets struck him repeatedly in the chest. He fell to the ground, and right there on the floor, he died. Officers then retreated to safer ground, and they themselves returned fire. The two gunmen sprayed more rounds, and then they ran. They knew full well that what they had just done had made them the most wanted men in Cambodia. So they grabbed a motorcycle and they fled. The very latest update is the two missing men have now been arrested, and here they are. They have been named as Tom Dina, 35 years old, who's going to jail for a bloody long time, and his assailant, Torn Singh, who's 29 years old, who's also going to jail for a bloody long time. The two suspects were arrested on the Cambodian-Thai border in Hoi Pet City. Potentially, they were looking to escape to Thailand, but they never made it. And now they have been charged with murder, attempted murder, illegal possession of firearms, as well as drug trafficking. They each face 30 years in prison for gunning down an officer of the law in cold blood, and in doing so, making themselves, for a while, the most wanted men in Cambodia. On this week's Crime Desk, a military officer beats a young girl and seriously injures her. A police officer illegally jails a woman to avoid paying back a loan. And a young baby is set ablaze by her own father. There are headlines that are shocking, those that disgust. Then there is headlines like this that create a special kind of rage. That's the utter injustice of it all. Let me see how this next headline fares with you. It's got about 9 out of 10 on my rageometer. Let's see how you do. Senior military police officer arrested for pistol whipping girl. And if that has piqued your anger, don't worry. It's about to get a whole load worse, as a senior military police officer was arrested this week for beating a girl in the head with his pistol, causing the teenage girl to be very seriously injured. So, how did this all come about? Well, this officer had a minor traffic accident with the teenage girl's motto in Sen Sok district on Wednesday night. The girl's bike was stationary, and the officer's Toyota Land Cruiser shunted her bike. The girl asked for money to compensate for the damage done by the officer's vehicle, but the policeman refused, and an argument ensued. It was then that Brigadier General Chen pulled out his pistol and he beat the young girl in the head so violently he caused her severe injuries. This savage beating was only ended when other police officers on duty nearby intervened. Brigadier General Chen has now been detained at the National Military Headquarters in Phnom Penh. But I wish to end this absurd tale with something that I have not told you. Remember how the officer's Land Cruiser hit the girl's motto from the rear and she had asked for compensation? Well, guess how much she asked for? Go on, have a guess. Well, she asked for $5. Yes, just $5. But instead of accepting the young girl's very gracious offer, the senior officer beat her so hard she ended up in hospital. He now faces some very serious questions about behaviour that can only be described as deplorable. The first story in our crime desk this week was of a brigadier general arrested for a savage assault on a young girl. And now we have another story of yet another brigadier general who overstepped the trust that the public had put into him. Now this story goes back to May of this year when this headline appeared. Arrest warrant issued for Brigadier General by Siem Reap Court. A Brigadier General Kossar had an arrest warrant issued in connection with a case involving a wealthy woman in Siem Reap. The anti-corruption unit wanted the senior officer for abuse of power. You see, what he did was he borrowed money from a well-to-do lady, but he refused to pay it back. When she insisted that he did pay the money back, the officer then named her as the debtor, saying in fact it was her who had borrowed money, and under that false pretext, he then threw her into jail. Yep, he illegally jailed the woman and thought he could get away with it. The innocent woman's family and friends took to social media, and the story spread like wildfire. And at the same time, the wealthy lady's lawyers started their advance. And soon, this story became so prominent, the corrupt officer was cornered and he was arrested. The very latest on this story is that the officer has now been sentenced to 6 years in jail, and he has been stripped of his uniform. A man who thought a police uniform meant he was not to serve the public, but that uniform was in fact to serve himself. Do you recall this story from a few weeks back? It was about a man who got into a row with his wife, and his resolution to that conflict was very extreme, as he grabbed a large kitchen knife and he slashed his wife's throat, killing her. And then he slashed his baby's throat, killing his own baby daughter as well. Now I thought, when I read that, it had to be the most barbaric of murders involving a baby that I'd ever reported on. Well, that's what I thought, but I was wrong, as this headline appeared this week. Husband sets fire to sleeping wife and baby. A man is in custody this week after he poured petrol over his wife and his 1-month-old baby. He then stood back and set fire to them. The incident took place at 4 p.m. in Banteay Minche province. The victims were a 28-year-old woman and her infant daughter, who was just 45 days old. And you know when a baby is that young, because you only quote the age in days, not even weeks. The wife and the child had been peacefully sleeping on a bed in the kitchen. The husband had walked towards them. In his hand, he held a can full of petrol. He then proceeded to pour the gasoline over his wife and the child. He then raised a blowtorch that he had already lit, and he set fire to both of them. Screaming through the flames, the wife rose, and she ran into the bathroom, desperate to try and get some water. But her agony was to continue as her husband had followed her. He had then picked up a screwdriver and he drove that screwdriver into her head repeatedly. The screaming and the commotion alerted the neighbours, who ran to the scene, and they tried to restrain that husband. But he got away and he fled on his motto. But he was soon captured and he confessed. The very latest on this is at current, both mother and child are alive. But that sadistic fire lit by the husband will forever be etched, not only in their minds, but also on their bodies. And they will have to live with the horrific wounds left by a madman. We end this week with this photo. It is a border between Cambodia and Thailand. It is in the north of An Long Ven. It's a border I have come to love, as it is here that I cross when I go temple hunting in Thailand. But this very border, just like so many others, has been closed for an awful long time. And it has left me in despair, not knowing when it is I will be able to cross again and head off into the place I feel comfortable, the unknown. Well, this week we did see advancement with talks between the two nations. And just like me, Cambodians themselves are hoping for normality after the recent peace treaty that has been signed. This is not just good news for myself with my selfish whims of travelling, but also to the near 900,000 migrant workers from Cambodia who have been silently struggling to hold their financial lives together. There has been further advancement to normality when Cambodia and Thailand agreed on removal of heavy weapons along border. Now that is a big step forward, as both nations have now reached a major milestone in their ongoing efforts to strengthen that peace, following a special border committee meeting. Under the new agreement, both sides established 3 categories of heavy weaponry to be withdrawn in phases. Type A, multiple launch rocket systems. Type B refers to all artillery systems, and Type C refers to armour-plated platforms, especially battle tanks. The first phase will take place from the 1st to the 21st of November, followed by the second phase from the 22nd of November to the 12th of December, and the final phase from the 13th to the 31st of December. So, if, like me, you are aching to get out and go wandering, the agenda is set for a total de-escalation of troops and of armour by the end of the year. And just hopefully in the interim period, both sides will also set a clear date as to when those borders will open again. And the lifeblood and the work and the money returns to all those that have been so deeply affected by this recent conflict. It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week.
And as always, before we go to the weather, a quick thing from my week, and I like to get out in the countryside, and what you see here is a place where I stop to get some water when I'm out on my cycle ride. It's then I noticed a tapping sound. I looked across and I saw these two. There's this young girl, and she's got these very plain spheres. You see, they're just, well, exceedingly dull, round, and plain. But then the magic happens. Her mother's right next to her, and she's tapping away, and she's putting an intricate design onto these. And what they will become is bowls. You separate them, and it becomes 2 bowls. But I never ever thought for a moment they were made by hand. I thought it was pressed metal. So there you go. When you see these in the market, they're actually made by hand. So it's to the weather, and we dump straight in there. And what do we see? No, it's gone off my screen. Every week I do this, don't I? Right, pause. Here we go. And here we are at the weather. And what have we got? We scan across the base here, and I've got a high of 30, 31, 32 on Saturday. Rain, smidgens of rain, and a lot of lightning. Weirdly, lightning with no rain. Fair enough. But there's also sun. See right there at the end of the week, Saturday? Sun. And that's the way we're heading. We're heading towards much better weather. The humidity, about the 70-80% mark. Your winds, the traditional 10 to 12 kilometres per hour.
This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly Roundup.